and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the articles displayed on the screen from the daily edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 20th August 2019. So let us start our discussion. Now this article on page number 11 talks about various concerns regarding the recently released tiger census. And in this article, the author has highlighted various issues regarding the reliability of the data which is provided by the tiger census. And he has questioned the authenticity of this data. So in this article, we will try to understand the key points which have been highlighted by the author, and this will fall under General Studies paper 3 in the topic environment. And as we all know that the tiger census or the fourth tiger census was released recently, and it was discussed in the DNS of 30th July 2019. So regarding the tiger census, you can refer this video. However, in this article, we will try to look at the critique of the tiger census data. Now, while criticizing the recent data released by the fourth tiger census, the author has highlighted the history of tiger census in India and also has criticized the historical methods which were used by the forest bureaucracy. So in this line, it has been highlighted that in the beginning, the forest bureaucracy relied on the pug mark census method. Now, this pug mark census method involves counting the marks which are created by the tigers while moving around by their pugs. Now, this method has been criticized by the author as not being scientific in nature. Now, in 1990s, a new scientific method was developed which was known as the double sampling technique. Now, this double sampling technique was a statistical technique which was used for estimation of tigers. Now, despite the development of such new statistical techniques, the forest bureaucracy did not accept these techniques till 2005. And the forest bureaucracy wanted to rely on the old and the indigenously developed pug mark census method. Now, the unreliability of this pug mark census method was revealed in the year 2005 when the tiger population of the Sariska Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan was completely wiped out. However, even then, the official census which was using the pug mark census method claimed that the tiger population was intact in Sariska. So this highlighted a major flaw in the pug mark census method technique. Now, after such flaws in the pug mark techniques were highlighted, the forest bureaucracy has now accepted and is using new techniques for tiger sampling. The way in which the tiger sampling was done in this census will be provided in the PDF attached to this video. So you can go through that. However, even now, there are certain issues in the manner in which the tigers are being estimated in India. So in this line, it has been highlighted that presently there is lack of surveys by independent qualified scientists. And the whole burden of tiger population estimation is on the forest bureaucracy itself. Now this gives rise to a conflict of interest. And even when they are responsible for the conservation of tigers, they are the only ones who are responsible for tiger estimation. And this reflects a conflict of interest because there is lack of any independent survey for the tiger estimation or the population estimation of tigers. So in this line, the author has highlighted that the need of the hour is public-private partnership-based framework which is led by qualified scientists to conduct independent monitoring. Further highlighting one of the flaws in the present method of tiger estimation, the author has highlighted that the officials have failed to provide an annual update on the tiger numbers and their survival rates. And this is particularly because this exercise is carried out once in 4 years. Further, the present methodology provides a very flexible estimate of the tiger population. Thus, the author has raised the concern that there are chances of misleading numbers shown by the bureaucracy. Now, as you might be knowing that the present census has provided a range of tiger population, and based on that range, the final tiger population has been arrived at. So, the present tiger population has been around 2967. However, the range varies from 2500 to 3,300. So there is enough flexibility in this range, and this can be manipulated and can provide the misleading numbers. And that is why concerns have been raised regarding such a methodology. Further, various independent scientists have provided potential of tigers which the Indian habitats can sustain. And this potential is of about 10,000 to 15,000 tigers in India. However, when the scientists are providing such a huge estimate of potential of tigers in India, the forest officials have provided a very conservative estimate of about only 3,500 tigers. So this shows that the resources available in India which can sustain a tiger population of about 3,500 only, and which is very conservative, and which stands in contrast with the estimation of habitat potential provided by the scientific community. So, what are the main concerns which have been raised? The first is that the pugmark census method was used previously and which was unscientific in nature. However, after that, new techniques were developed, for example, double sampling technique. However, even after the development of these new techniques, there is lack of surveys by independent and qualified scientists. And also, there is conflict of interest because the bureaucracy which is responsible for tiger conservation is itself estimating the tiger population. So, in such a scenario, the bureaucracy will have a tendency to inflate the numbers of tiger population. Also, the new methodology provides very flexible estimates, so the numbers provided can be misleading at times. And finally, the officials have provided very conservative estimate of the habitat potential of tigers in India. So in this article, the author has raised various concerns regarding the methodology which is deployed by the forest officials for tiger estimation. And this methodology for tiger census has been provided in today's PDF, so you can go through that. With this, let's move to the next article. Now, these two articles on page number 10 and 11 are about the newly proposed Chief of Defence Staff position. Now, the creation of this new position of Chief of Defence Staff has been in news since the independence speech of Prime Minister. So, in both these articles, we will try and understand what are the challenges which are likely to be faced by this Chief of Defence Staff if he is appointed. And also, we'll look at the main objectives with which such Chief of Defence Staff has been created. Now, previously also articles have appeared in the newspaper related to the Chief of Defence Staff, and they have been covered in previous DNS videos. However, in this video, let us look at the points which are highlighted by both these articles. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 3 under the topic security. Now, although the PM had announced the formation of the office of Chief of Defence Staff, the tenure and who will hold the post has not been decided. However, some of the objectives of creating the position of Chief of Defence Staff include. So first is that the Chief of Defence Staff is expected to bridge the gaps between the three services, that is the Indian Air Force, the Indian Military and the Indian Navy. And it will also reduce the response time by ensuring coordination between the three services. It will also act as a better link in terms of planning, coordination and execution in the three hands of the Indian Armed Forces. Further, it is expected that the Chief of Defence Staff will keep the Defence Minister continuously and fully briefed and effectively advised, and will also become a part of the Cabinet Committee on Security Affairs, which is the main body handling the security situation in the country. Further, the Chief of Defence Staff will emphasize on defence policy and planning, and as the main emphasis or the focus of the Chief of Defence Staff will be on policy making and the planning related to defence sector, this will allow the three other service chiefs, namely the Indian Air Force Chief, the Military Chief and the Navy Chief, to focus more on administrative functioning of their armed forces more efficiently. So the policy and planning part of the three service chiefs will now be taken care by the Chief of Defence Staff, and this is likely to improve the administrative efficiency of the Indian forces. Now, another important opportunity which is provided by the formation of Chief of Defence Staff is that it will bring the important strategic forces of India under the CDS. And by the term strategic forces, what is meant is that various agencies related to security like the Intelligence Bureau, the Research and Analysis Wing, RAW, etc. will now come under CDS. So if these strategic forces come under the Chief of Defence Staff, it will allow to integrate the disconnected intelligence apparatus of India. So this will be one single point for having an integrated intelligence apparatus, and which will ultimately improve the security situation in the country. So these are few of the objectives and the opportunities which are provided by the creation of Chief of Defence Staff. However, what are the likely challenges which will be faced if such a position is created? Let us look at them, which have been highlighted in these articles. Now let us look at some of the challenges which are likely to arise if the position of the Chief of Defence Staff is created. Now first is that a Chief of Defence Staff will have to be politically neutral and will have to shed his service affiliations. Now what is meant by this is that the Chief of Defence Staff will be mainly selected from the Indian Armed Forces, Air Force or the Navy. And in this background, the Chief of Defence Staff will have to shed his service affiliations from the three hands of the Indian forces. and he will also be required to look after all the three forces. Further, the CDS or the Chief of Defence Staff has to act as a bridge or a coordinator between the bureaucracy of Ministry of Defence and the Cabinet Committee on Security and also the military branches. Now, this capability in a Chief of Defence Staff is only likely to come if he has experience of various joint service assignments and also if he has exposure of working with the government departments. Further, the Chief of Defence Staff needs to be aware of the security environment of India across India's geopolitical sphere. And he would also require political awareness necessary to engage with the diverse stakeholders that include other countries, international organizations, etc. Further, there is a need to balance the security atmosphere between the military, air force, and navy. Now, what is meant by this is that India currently faces multiple security challenges. However, India's security atmosphere is mainly tilted towards its military. And this is because India has been involved in various conflicts at its border. For example, India has had conflicts with Pakistan, with China, with Myanmar, etc. And in all these operations, Indian military has always played a key role. So the Chief of Defence Staff will now have to balance between the maritime power, the air force power, and the military power, so that the other forces do not feel neglected. And only by a balance between all these three forces, India can aim to be a leading power in the region. So in this background, the authors have highlighted that these challenges need to be overcome by the Chief of Defence Staff, and this would require great amount of political will. And this political will or support was missing to the earlier form Chief of Integrated Defence Staff. So the key challenges in front of the Chief of Defence Staff will be that he will have to shed his service affiliations. Secondly, he will have to be a bridge and will have to act as a coordinator between the bureaucracy of Ministry of Defence, the Cabinet Committee of Security and the military branches. And further, he needs to be aware of the security environment of India and also requires political awareness of various international organizations and the countries. And finally, he needs to balance the security atmosphere between military, air force and navy. So these were few objectives with which the Chief of Defence Staff is being created. However, these are certain challenges which will be faced by the newly appointed Chief of Defence Staff, and all these can be done away with only if there is political will. With this, let's move to the next article. Now, this article on page number 10 talks about the far right's disruption of the globalization. So it has mainly highlighted the steps taken by the superpowers of the world to disrupt the process of globalization. And in this, mainly the author has been talking about the steps of protectionism which have been taken by the United States of America and its President Donald Trump. Further, the author has also highlighted the various steps which are taken by the European community which has been disrupting the process of globalization. Now, this article per se is not important for us. However, in the General Studies paper 1 of the mains examination, there is a specific topic which is termed as effects of globalization of Indian society. And this aspect of the globalization and its impact on Indian society has been discussed in detail in the NCERT of class 12th of sociology. So let us understand the various aspects of globalization from this NCERT. So the globalization and its impact on Indian society has been discussed in the NCERT of class 12th. And the name of this NCERT is Social Change and Development. And the chapter 6 of this NCERT discusses the impact of globalization on Indian society. Now, the globalization has been mainly about the global interconnections between the various countries of the world. So in this line, this chapter argues that if globalization is about global interconnections, can we ask whether this is really a new phenomenon? So this chapter argues that even in the ancient time, various countries were interconnected in terms of trade, etc. So regarding the interconnections in the ancient times, this chapter highlights the example of the Silk Route. And it reads that this Silk Route connected India to the great civilizations which existed in China, Persia, Egypt and Rome. Further, during the ancient times, many people came to India and settled here, and some of them included traders, conquerors and migrants. Further, various scholars and religious pilgrims also visited India in the ancient times, and some of them include Yunsang in search of his knowledge for Buddhism, etc. So these examples highlight that India was not an isolated country in the ancient times, and it had its own set of connections with different countries. For example, it was connected via Silk Route to various countries like China, Persia, Egypt, etc. Further, the scholars of ancient India also had an international character. For example, the greatest grammarian of Sanskrit, Panini, was of Afghan origin. So, concluding about the ancient and medieval times, the book has highlighted that global interactions or even a global outlook are not novel developments unique to the modern period or unique to modern India. And these interactions and interconnections have existed in the ancient and the medieval times as well. However, a new chapter in India's global connections started when it was colonized by the British. Now, colonialism had a huge impact on the world, and this led to migration of large number of people from Europe to various parts of the world. For example, many people moved from Europe to the Americas. Also, there was widespread slave trade, and this led to the movement of African origin people to the Americas. Further, various Indians migrated to countries like South Africa as indentured labor. So, colonialism also played a part in the global connections. So, this highlights that even in the modern times, the global connections have existed. So, the NCRT further explains that globalization refers to the growing interdependence between different people, regions, and countries in the world as social and economic relationships come to stretch worldwide. Further, it suggests that although the economic forces are an integral part of the globalization, they are not the only one driving the process of globalization. So, to further explain the process of globalization, the book further explains that the process of globalization has been driven forward by the development of information and communication technologies that have intensified the speed and scope of interaction between people all over the world. So, the present day globalization has been boosted and driven forward by the developments in information and communication technology. And what has the development of information communication technology done? It has intensified the speed and the scope of interaction between people all over the world. So, this particular aspect would be a definition for globalization. Now, after this, let us look at different dimensions of the process of globalization. So, first dimension is the economic dimension. In this, we often discuss the economic policy of liberalization, and as we all know that in 1991, India embraced the liberalization, privatization, and the globalization process. So, in economic terms, this process of liberalization initiated the process of globalization of Indian economy. Now, before 1991, the policy of government was to have a greater control over the economy, and India was inspired by the socialistic principles which were enshrined in the Indian Constitution as a result of its inspiration from the erstwhile USSR's planned economy. However, after 1991, India opened its market to investments from various other countries also. Now, liberalization of economy meant the steady removal of rules that regulated the Indian trade and finance regulations, and these measures were termed as economic reforms. And as explained further, since July 1991, the Indian economy has witnessed a series of reforms in all major sectors of economy, which include agriculture, industry, trade, foreign investment, technology, etc. And the basic assumption was that greater integration into global market would be beneficial to the Indian economy. Now, this process of liberalization also involved taking of loans from international institutions like the IMF or the International Monetary Fund. And this was mainly because India was facing a balance of payment crisis in the early 1990s. Now, to take the loans from the IMF, India had to fulfill certain conditions and had to undertake certain economic reforms. And these basically led to the liberalization of Indian economy. Now, as the Indian economy integrated with the world economy, there was also greater say by international institutions like the World Trade Organizations. Now, the opening of markets in 1991 and the reforms of liberalization, privatization, and globalization led to the investments by various transnational corporations. And these include the investments from various international organizations like Coca-Cola, General Motors, Google, Amazon, etc. Further, various Indian organizations or Indian corporations are also investing in the other markets. The third important aspect of the economic globalization is the electronic economy. An electric economy mainly deals with the international transfer of money by the use of internet. So it further explains that international transactions have been facilitated as a result of the globalization process, and such transactions can happen only because of the communication revolution. So the information technology has played a key role in the electronic economy, which has been the result of globalization. And the fourth economic aspect of the globalization is the weightless economy or the knowledge economy. Now, traditionally, the world economic trade was based on agricultural and the industrial products. However, the new age economy is based on information and knowledge. And a prime example of this is the information technology field. So, it further explains that a knowledge economy is one in which much of the workforce is involved not in the physical production or distribution of material goods, but is involved in their design, development, technology, marketing, sale, and servicing. Further, the weightless economy has been defined as the one in which the products have their base in information, as in the case with computer based services. So, basically, it is talking about the information and technology services, which are termed as the weightless economy and also knowledge economy. And the last aspect of the economic globalization is the globalization of finance. And this has mainly been facilitated by the information technology revolution. It further explains that globally integrated financial markets undertake billions of dollars worth transactions within seconds in electronic circuits. And there is a 24-hour trading in capital and security markets, and that is why it has been termed as globalization of finance. Now, second important aspect of the globalization is the global communications, and these global communications have received a boost as a result of development and advances in the information and technology field. However, a flip side of this has been that India has witnessed a term which is known as the digital divide. Now, what is meant by digital divide is that there are people who have access to this digital world and they are known as the digital haves, and there are other people who do not have access to this digital world are known as the digital have nots. So, this divide between the people who can access the digital communications and those who cannot access the digital communications has been termed as digital divide. And an important scheme of Government of India has been the Digital India scheme, which has tried to bridge this digital divide and make the digital communications accessible for every Indian. Now, the third important aspect of globalization is the globalization and labor. And it also talks about a new international division of labor. So it further explains that a new international division of labor has emerged in which more and more routine manufacturing production and employment is done in the third world countries. Now, what are these third world countries? So these are those countries which are not as developed as the European economy or the American economy. And these were the countries who were the erstwhile colonies of these so-called developed countries. Now, as a result of this process of globalization, various countries have started outsourcing and moving their operations in countries where they can find cheap labor. And one of the prime example of this is the information technology field in India. And most of the important American information technology giants have moved some of their operations to various parts of India where the information technology employees are cheap. Further, the call centers of various companies have been outsourced to the developing countries. And all these reflect a new international division of labor. Now, the third aspect of globalization is the globalization and the political changes. Now, we know that the world was divided into two political blocs after the end of Second World War and what has been called as the Cold War. And the two blocs were represented by countries which supported the United States of America and the capitalist system of economy and politics. And the second bloc was the erstwhile USSR, and which represented the socialistic and the communist political and economic policies. Now, post 1990, the erstwhile USSR collapsed, and with this, the erstwhile socialistic world collapsed. And this has hastened or increased the speed of process of globalization. And now, world over, the economies are embracing the neoliberal economic measures. So post 1990s, most of the world has got economically integrated, and this is based on only one political and economic ideology, that is capitalism and what has been termed as the neoliberal economics. Now, another important political development related to globalization is the increasing international collaborations. And these include the European Union, the creation of ASEAN, and as we have learned recently that RCEP is being negotiated by the ASEAN plus 6 partners, and also various other regional groupings like SAARC, SAFTA, etc. And also it has led to the internationalization of the non-governmental organizations and trade-related organizations like the World Trade Organization. Now after this, let us look at the cultural aspects of globalization. Now, two important strands of debate related to the impact of globalization on the cultures is the homogenization versus the globalization of culture. Now, in this, it has been argued that all cultures will become similar over a period of time, and this has been termed as the process of homogenization. Now, there are others who argue against this process, and they argue that there is an increasing tendency towards globalization of the culture. And what is meant by globalization is that it refers to the mixing of global culture with that of local culture. So, this globalization refers to the mixing of global culture with that of local culture. And this process of intermixing of the global and the local culture has been termed as the process of globalization. Now, homogenization has also been defined as the McDonaldization of the cultures. Now, this is reflected in various aspects of culture. Now, various supporters of the homogenization process as a result of the globalization argue that the Western culture is intruding the cultures across countries and it is leading to a similarity of cultures across the world. So, this creates a problem or issue that it will ultimately take over the other cultures. So, this has been termed as a cultural hegemony. However, others have argued that these global cultures, when they enter a particular country, they adapt themselves to the needs of the local cultures. And prominent example is that the McDonald's sells only vegetarian and chicken products in India, not its beef products which are popular abroad. So this shows that they are giving value to the local cultures as well, and this process has been termed as globalization of culture. Now, various other aspects of the globalization have also been discussed in this chapter. For example, what has been the impact of globalization on gender and culture, how this globalization has boosted the culture of consumption, and also what has been termed as the corporate culture, which has its origin in the process of globalization. And this also reflects the impact of globalization on the cultures in various organizations. And finally, this chapter highlights the threat to many indigenous craft and literary traditions and knowledge systems as a result of the process of globalization. So you can go through this NCRT and understand the various aspects of globalization. And this is an important part of the General Studies Paper 1. And previously, various questions have been asked based on this process of globalization. Now, these are the two questions which were asked in the mains examination of 2015 and 2016 related to the impact and effects of globalization. So you should go through the chapter of NCRT of class 12th of sociology, and after that you should try and answer these questions from your mains examination point of view. With this, let's move to the next article. Now, this article on page number 15 talks about a new cancer drug which has been launched by the Dr. Reddy's. And the name of this drug is Versavo, which is a biosimilar of the Avastin. So in this context, let us understand the meaning of the term biosimilar. And this can be an important term for us for preliminary examination point of view, and it will fall under the general science topic. So what is meant by this term biosimilar? So it is a biologic medical product that is almost an identical copy of an original product that is manufactured by a different company. So it is basically an identical copy of an original product. Now then, what is the difference between the biosimilars and the original product? So these are officially approved versions of the original innovator product and can be manufactured when the original product's patent expires. Now we know that the patents are provided to any innovation which is done by the medical companies. And this patent is generally provided for 20 years. Now, during this patent period of 20 years, no other company can create or manufacture a similar or the same drug with the same chemical formula. However, after the patent expires, the other companies can also manufacture these drugs. And that is why the biosimilars are officially approved versions of the original innovator products and can be manufactured when the product's patent or the original product's patent expires. Now, why are these called as the biologics or the biosimilars? So simply because they are not chemically derived drugs, and these drugs are derived from the biological products. For example, such drugs can be derived from living organisms such as humans, animals, microorganisms, or yeasts. And clinically, they are used to treat patients with cancer, kidney diseases, autoimmune diseases, etc. So, these are few aspects of the biosimilars, and you should keep these terms in mind. With this, let's move to the next article. Now, this article on page number 9 is related to the Chandrayaan 2 mission, and which will fall under the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic current events of national importance, and it can also be an important part for us from the mains examination point of view in the general studies paper 3. Now, we have already covered this Chandrayaan 2 in a previous DNS video, so let us revise the key aspects of the Chandrayaan 2 mission. Now, if you look at the previous year questions, for example, in the year 2016, there were two questions related to important missions of Indian Space Research Organization. For example, there was a question related to AstroSat, which was one of the important missions of ISRO, and also there was a question related to Mangalyaan in the year 2016. And if you look at the statements which were asked in these questions, for example, the statement related to AstroSat was that other than USA and Russia, India is the only country to have launched a similar observatory into space. So the ranking of India in launching such missions have been asked in the examination. Further, if you look at the question that was related to Mangalyaan, the statement reads, it made India the second country to have a spacecraft orbit the Mars after USA. So such ranking of India related to the conduction of such missions is important. Further, in the question related to AstroSat, the weight of the satellite was asked, and also the distance of the orbit in which the satellite will be orbiting was also asked. Further, if you look at the question related to Mangalyaan, the uniqueness of this mission was asked. For example, the statement third reads, it made India the only country to be successful in making its spacecraft orbit the Mars in its very first attempt. So such special features or uniqueness and the key aspects of such missions become very important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. So keeping these questions in our mind, we will try to understand various facts related to Chandrayaan 2, which can be very important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. So before understanding various other facts, first let us look at the history of moon missions. So regarding India's history of the moon missions, India's first moon mission was launched in the year 2008, and it was launched from Sriharikota. Further, this first moon mission was launched using the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle or the PSLV. And at that time, India became the fourth country to plant its flag on the lunar surface, or India became the fourth country to place its mission on the moon. Now, what were the key outcomes of the Chandrayaan 1 mission? So, it detected traces of water along with other important minerals like magnesium, aluminium, and silicon. Now, globally, the first ever moon landing occurred in the year 1969 by the Apollo 11 mission of the NASA. And almost after 50 years after the Apollo 11 mission or the first moon landing, and almost a decade after the Chandrayaan 1 mission, India will now be launching its second lunar mission, which is known as Chandrayaan 2. And it will be launched on July 15, 2019, again from the Sriharikota station. Now, one unique aspect of this launch is that it will be launched by using GSLV or the Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle Mark III rocket. And as you have seen in the Chandrayaan 1 mission, India had used the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle or the PSLV. So that is a key difference between both the missions of India. Now, as Chandrayaan 2 is in news, you should understand and learn that India became the fourth country by the launch of Chandrayaan 1 mission in the year 2008, which is a very important fact for us from the preliminary examination point of view. And what all it detected? So it detected water and traces of magnesium, aluminium, and silicon. And also the first ever moon mission or the moon landing occurred in the year 1969 by the Apollo 11 mission of NASA. And further, the launch vehicle which was used for the first moon mission of India was PSLV. However, in the Chandrayaan 2 mission, which is the second mission, it will use Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle Mark III rocket or the GSLV Mark III rocket. Now let us look at some of the special features of this Chandrayaan 2 mission. So first is that it is the lunar mission of ISRO, and it comprises of an orbiter, a lander which is named as Vikram after the great Vikram Sarabhai, who was the pioneer of the Indian space program, and also a rover by the name Pragyan. So if you look at the orbiter, it weighs around 2379 kilograms. And the important feature of this orbiter is that it will be able to communicate with the land-based station at ISRO. And also it will communicate with the lander which is named as Vikram. And it will be placed in the lunar polar orbit and it will orbit the moon. Now the second important part of this Chandrayaan 2 is the lander which is named as Vikram after Vikram Sarabhai. And this lander is designed to function for one lunar day, which is equivalent to about 14 Earth days only. So this will function for only 14 Earth days on the moon's surface once it reaches the moon's surface. Further, this will also be able to communicate with the IDSN at Bangalore or the ground-based station at Bangalore. And it will also communicate with the orbiter as well as rover. And this lander is designed to execute a soft landing on the lunar surface. Now what is meant by this term soft landing is that normally it is differentiated with the term crash landing. And this crash landing takes place under the influence of gravity, and in such kind of landing there is no control over the lander. However, this soft landing is known as controlled landing, which means that the landing of this lander will be controlled from the ground station at Bangalore. And there is minimum damage in such kind of soft landing. So this is a controlled affair. Further, the weight of this lander is about 1471 kilograms. And finally, the most important part of this Chandrayaan 2 mission is the rover, which is named as Pragyan, and its weight is about 27 kilograms. So it is a 6-wheeled robotic vehicle as can be seen in this picture, and it uses the solar energy for its functioning. And one important aspect is that it can only communicate with the lander which is named as Vikram. And that lander can communicate with both the orbiter as well as the ground station which is based in Bangalore. Now what is unique about this Chandrayaan 2 is that it is the first space mission to conduct a soft landing on the moon's south polar region. An important aspect of the southern polar region of the moon is that it is a lunar surface area which is much larger than the north pole of the moon. And further, this south pole mainly remains in the shadow region. And that is why this moon mission of India becomes very important, because now it is targeting and will be gathering information from the south polar region. So some of the most important or special features of the Chandrayaan 2 are that it is the first space mission to conduct a soft landing on moon's south polar region. Secondly, it will be the first Indian expedition to attempt a soft landing on the lunar surface, and that too with the homegrown technology, which means that India has not taken assistance from any other country, and it is based on the homegrown technology, and it will be experimenting for the first time. Further, this will be the first Indian mission to explore the lunar terrain with homegrown technology. And finally, India will become the 4th country ever to soft land on the lunar surface. So all these facts are very important facts for us from the preliminary examination point of view, and they should be learned and kept in mind all the time. Further, as we have learned before, India will be using GSLV Mk3 in the launch of the Chandrayaan 2 mission. Now what this Chandrayaan 2 mission aims to do is that it will have 14 payloads. By simply payloads, you should mean that these are study devices, or these are the devices which will be gathering information, which will include scientific information. For example, it will be used for studying the topography, seismography, mineral identification and distribution, and the surface chemical composition of the moon, and especially the southern polar region of the moon. So this Chandrayaan 2 will focus on topographic studies. It will also learn and try to study the composition of the surface of moon, and it will conduct in situ studies or on-site study of the moon's surface. So which means that it does not aim to bring any material from the moon to the Earth's surface on which the experiments could be done. And these experiments will be done on the surface of the moon itself by the various payloads. And again, this Chandrayaan 2 focuses on homegrown technology. For example, it has a lander which is capable of soft landing on lunar surface, as we have learned earlier. Also, the algorithms which will be used by this Chandrayaan 2 mission are wholly developed by the India's scientific community, which means that India did not depend on any other country for this Chandrayaan 2 moon mission. And finally, it has a rover which is a 6-wheeled robot-like structure, and it will be capable of conducting in situ payload experiments, which means that it will be conducting various experiments on the surface of the moon itself. Now after this, let us look at what is the purpose of moon mission and what are the scientific objectives of Chandrayaan 2. And finally, why are we exploring the lunar south pole? And all these aspects can be important for us from the mains examination point of view. So all those points that we have learned till now are important from preliminary examination point of view, and these points will be important for us from the mains examination point of view. So the first in this line is the main purpose of the moon mission. Now regarding moon, you should note that it is the closest cosmic body at which space discovery can be attempted and documented. This is because all other planets in the space are very far off. So moon, which is the closest cosmic body, can give us good insights about the various aspects of the space. Now as moon is the closest cosmic body to the Earth's surface, it becomes a promising place for demonstrating technologies which are required for other deep space missions. So before planning various space missions for other celestial bodies, the scientific community is focusing on moon, which is the closest cosmic body. So in this line, the Chandrayaan 2 attempts to foster a new age of discovery, increase our understanding of the space, stimulate advancement of technology, promote global alliances, and inspire a future generation of explorers and scientists. So after this, let us look at what are the scientific objectives of the Chandrayaan 2 and why are we exploring the lunar south pole. Now regarding moon, you should note that it provides best linkage with Earth's history, or the Earth's early history when the Earth's surface was formed. And further, it offers an undisturbed historical record of the inner solar system environment. And due to this extensive mapping of the lunar surface, to study variations in the lunar surface composition is essential to trace back the origin and the evolution of moon. So by understanding the evolution of moon, the scientific community is trying to understand the history of formation of Earth and the inner solar system. Further, as we all know that the Chandrayaan 1 provided evidences for presence of water molecule on the surface of moon. So in this line, further studies are required on the extent of water molecule distributions on the surface of moon. And also this mission will try to address the origin of water on moon. And we are focusing on the south pole of the moon, or the lunar south pole, because this area or this portion of moon remains in the shadow region. And also it is much larger as compared to that of North Pole. Further, it has not been explored very much till now. So that is why the understanding and the research in the south pole of the moon will provide us deep insights about the composition and the topography of the moon surface. Further, there is possibility of the presence of water in this permanently shadowed area. And also this South Pole region has craters or deep lakes that are cold traps and contain a fossil record of the early solar system. So this will also help us understanding the origin and evolution of the solar system. And in this line, the Chandrayaan 2 will attempt the soft landing in between the two craters by the name Manzinus C and Simplius N. And they will be at a latitude of about 70 degrees south on the surface of moon. So besides having various general objectives, it also has various scientific objectives about the understanding of moon. Now if you look at the previous year questions, for example this question, it read, with reference to AstroSat, the astronomical observatory launched by India, which of the following statements is or are correct? The first statement reads, other than USA and Russia, India is the only country to have launched a similar observatory into space. Now regarding AstroSat, you should note that it was first astronomical observatory which was launched by ISRO. However, before India, USA, Russia, Japan and European Space Agency have already launched such kind of observatory, and that is why this statement becomes incorrect. The second statement reads, AstroSat is a 200 kg satellite which is placed in an orbit at 1650 kilometers above the Earth's surface. This is also incorrect because AstroSat weighed 1513 kilograms and was placed in an orbit at a distance of about 650 kilometers above the Earth's surface. So the correct answer here was D, that is neither statement 1 nor the statement 2. So by solving this question, you might have understood that these aspects are very important for us from preliminary examination point of view. So similarly, various special facts regarding the Chandrayaan 2 can be very important for us from preliminary examination point of view. Further, if you look at the other question which was related to Mangalyaan, the first statement is that Mangalyaan launched by ISRO is called the Mars Orbiter mission, which was a correct statement. The second question reads, it made India the second country to have a spacecraft orbit the Mars after USA. Now, this second statement is incorrect because India became the fourth country to do so. And finally, the third statement reads, it made India the only country to be successful in making its spacecraft orbit the Mars in its very first attempt. Now, this statement was also correct. This is because various other Mars missions which were launched by countries like USA, etc., had not been successful in their very first attempt. And India's Mars mission was successful in its very first attempt. That is why it was also one of the unique aspects of Mangalyaan. And the correct answer here was C, that is 1 and 3 only were correct statements. And at the end of today's discussion, we will have a practice question related to the Chandrayaan 2 from our preliminary examination point of view. Now, after today's discussion, you should try these questions from your preliminary examination point of view. The answer will be displayed after 5 seconds. The first question reads, the Dampa Tiger Reserve is located in which of the following states? So there are 3 tiger reserves in which no tigers have been found in the recent tiger census. So one of them is the Dampa Tiger Reserve, and you should be aware that it is located in the state of Mizoram. So the correct answer is C. Second question reads, which of the following statements are correct about the Chandrayaan 2 mission? The first is that India will become the first country to ever soft land on the lunar surface. This statement is incorrect because India will become the 4th country ever to soft land on the lunar surface. However, if this mission becomes successful, India will become the first ever country to soft land on the south pole of the lunar surface. The second question reads, it is a fully indigenously developed mission of ISRO, which is a correct statement. So the correct answer here is B, that is 2 only. The third question reads, which of the following are correct about the biosimilars? The first statement is that they are chemically derived drugs which are used to treat human beings, which is incorrect because these are biologically derived and are derived from living organisms. Second statement reads, they are manufactured by any company even when a patent exists for the innovator drug, which is incorrect because they can only be manufactured once the patent expires. So the correct answer is D, that is neither 1 nor 2. The fourth question is again related to Buxa Tiger Reserve, where the tiger population has been found to be 0 in the recent tiger census. And the question reads, Buxa Tiger Reserve is located in which of the following states? So the correct answer here is C, that is West Bengal. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Now let's move on to the question for the day.